We'll begin. Welcome to the second masterclass of the day, and I would like to introduce our masterclass leader, Ursula Bittner from Austria. Ursula is the Secretary General of the Donau Soja Association, and she's a specialist in agriculture, European agriculture policy, right to food, and food sovereignty. And today, she's going to talk about how to develop a standard based on her experience and her association's experience, and give some practical tips and tools, and maybe let you take a crack at developing a similar standard. But I'll leave that up to her. And Ursula, we're happy to have you here. Thanks for coming, and look forward to your class.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for...
Excuse me, just again, because of the film, if you want to say something, please wait for me to come with the microphone so we get you on film. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to present to you our association and our objectives we have, our vision, and how we founded us and why we actually founded us. We are an association with our headquarters in Vienna, and I will introduce to you how we developed in the last 6 years. So in 2011 we started with the discussions, and 2012 in January we actually found the association. But before I will go into the all organization details and the standard and for what we stand for, also have some folders which I not hand out to you now because of the group work, and if you know too much then you might not can do the group work in your opinions. So I would start from the beginning, from the very beginning, from soya cultivation. So I will give you a brief background and history of soya cultivation worldwide. So it's 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, soya was the first time cultivated in Asia and East Asia, and it was mostly used for food, so like tofu or fermented soya products. And then at the World Exhibition in 1977 in Vienna, Professor Haberland, this is this guy here, he got seeds from Japanese visitors in the World Exhibition in Vienna. And he found it really interesting to experiment with those soya beans. And in Austria, we always say, since Sissi, this is Queen Elizabeth, I think most of you know her, we have soya beans in Austria because she was at the World Exhibition. So this is for us, it's over 140 years we have soya beans in Austria, and therefore in Europe. So what he did is he sent all the soybeans to partners in Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, and asked other researchers to make some experience with these soybeans, because he was very much interested in this very high protein content of the soybeans. And he made this book, the Soybean. He released it, and these are the first big researchers on the European continent about soybeans. And he always had in mind soya for food. So he wanted to have a good food product for humans with high protein content and healthy and so on. Then unfortunately he died very early through to an accident, and no one really took over this whole research on soybeans in Austria and in Europe. So the Americans saw these soybeans and were very much interested in it, but they don't really invested in taste of the soybean. And maybe most of you know that some soybeans taste maybe a bit beany, a bit not perfectly, a bit bitter. So you need a lot of investment also in research to get a good taste and a product development, which didn't happen. So the soybean became a very important feed. So I would like to that you take a guess how much share of soybeans worldwide is at the moment used for feed. What do you think? 40%. 40%? So sorry.
90.
Sorry.
40%.
40%?
90%.
90? 90? Well, it is actually 79%, but this I have to say, and those who say 90% are more on the right track, because these are numbers from 10 years ago. And I don't even believe they're totally right, because there are no official numbers about that. But I think that when you calculate 90% for human consumption, they also calculate soya lecithin, for example. And if you have soya lecithin, you divide the protein and the oil from the soybean, and from the oil you make the lecithin, and the protein, which is left over, is taken for animal feed. So I believe it's 2% for food, like tofu, soya drinks, and so on, and the rest is actually going in the industry and for feed. So for biodiesel, you can do everything with soybeans. You can make socks out of it. You can make some materials out of it for airplanes. Everything. So it's oil basically, and of course feed. Toasted soybean and extruded soybeans, which is soybean meal called. So when we look at the world situation, I think most of you know that the biggest producer of soybeans are Brazil, Argentina, and the United States. And most of the soybean cultivated in that area are GM, genetical modification. Everyone knows GM, I guess, yeah. And in Brazil, there are some areas which are still non-GM, certified non-GM. Argentina and US, it's basically all GM there. Genetically modified, so with biotechnology. And in soybeans, it's mostly the resistance on glyphosate, so they can spray Roundup Ready without killing the plants. It's basically in the soybeans. They're different GMs, of course. And then we have China and India, and Europe gets more and more important in soybean cultivation. And if we look at the processing, what I meant before, so every time you eat soybeans, you need to process it. Even for feed or for food, it doesn't matter. You cannot digest it if you eat it raw. It's like beans, it's like lentils, you don't eat it raw. And in the feed production, you separate oil from the protein, so extruded it, and then you can feed the protein to the animals. And that's what happened here. So, for example, when you look here at the United States, they process 40 million tons of soybeans in the United States. And it changed a bit the picture from the production to the processing. There's one thing which is changing a lot. It's China. China, increased their imports in the last 5 to 10 years dramatically. So they are the biggest producer of pork. And for pork production, you need a lot of soybeans because they have to grow very fast, and that's why they need a lot of protein. So China is really influencing the world market. They import 85 million tons of soybeans, and they process about 70 million. Am I too fast? No? Okay. So what really concerns us also from a perspective of an NGO is what we saw in South America is when you look at the percentage of soya on the agriculture land is not really a sustainable agriculture. So in Paraguay, at the moment, it's already over 80%. This is numbers from 2014. So 80% of agriculture area is cultivated with soya in Paraguay. And even though you certify those soybeans with GM-free and waste management and whatsoever, it's kind of a question of an agriculture system we want to have. And an agriculture system might not be 80% soybeans on the fields. So what we saw in Europe, or what we have in Europe, is a tremendous import of those soybeans. So we have 40 million tons of soybeans coming to Europe. This is equivalent 60 million hectares. This is the size of Germany's agriculture area. We import every year from South America. And when we look closer in Europe, this is the distinguishing between soybean meal and soya beans. So we import more meal than beans. First, because China is buying all the beans, and second, there are more. In South America, they have very big production areas, so they might be also a bit cheaper when they process soybeans. But this means also for Europe that we kind of lose economic value because we are importing the processed soybeans and feed it directly to the animal. And if we would import soybeans or produce soybeans, then we would have the economic value in the country. So we have crushing miles and toasting facilities to process those soybeans. And this is an interesting slide because what happened in the last 50, 60 years in Europe is also in regard of the International Division of Labor. We separated actually the farmers from, the farmers had fields and animals. And due to this agriculture system, you can see here what developed in Europe. We separated the fields from the animal production, and the net imports increased. So more pig meat was produced, more imports were needed. You understand what I mean? So, like, formerly a farmer had soybean field and corn field and rape and whatsoever, and then he feeded his animals with his fields. And this was separated, so everyone is concentrating on one thing, and therefore we needed the imports of soybeans. And this is really interesting. And our own grain legume production stayed actually the same. It actually decreased also. So why we want to have soya from Europe? So what is our answer on that? When you remember the Paraguay issue with 80% of soybeans in Paraguay and 60% in Uruguay, 50% of in Argentina, and at the same time having in mind that crop rotation is actually very important for biodiversity, for soil quality, and also for reduction of pesticides. So if you have a good biodiversity on your fields, you might not need so much plant protection as used in monocultures. And if you look at Europe, we have 2% of our agricultural land is cultivated with soybeans. And also important to know that soybeans are legumes, which are nitrogen fixating crops, means that they don't need so much fertilizer than other, like corn needs artificial fertilizer. And years ago, in a good agriculture system or also in organic production, they use beans and soybeans and lentils in the crop rotation to get the nitrogen in the soil. So if we would increase our soy production to 5%, we could actually fulfill our demand by already 56%. So it's not a lot, not so much increase, but still we could fulfill 56% of our demand. Having also in mind, of course, that we need to reduce our demand. This is another topic. I'm not going into detail, but we're eating way too much animal products, and that's why we need a lot of soybeans, of course, to feed those animals. And I was really positively surprised about the breakfast here, about the plant-based products. I'm often at environmental conferences and climate conferences, and then it's just animal products everywhere, and I'm like, it's not very sustainable. So this is really positive here. Yeah, and then there's another study, which was released 2011, so in the year when we were founded, which observed the CO2 emission of porks. So, and they found out that if you produce 1 kilogram of pork, 77% of the CO2 emissions are coming from the change of land in overseas countries. So from soya, also transport, but much more this change from forest to agricultural land. And in Austria, only in pork production, if we would use 50% regional soya, we could save 1.1 million tons of CO2, which is a big number. And all the retailers in Austria had that on their table when we came up with our idea, which helped us, of course. And another thing also where back then released is a Eurobarometer. I don't know if you know it. It's a survey done in the European Union. And they were asking people, what is your biggest concern in food? And top one is pesticides. But you can see here already 66% are very or fairly worried of genetically modified crops or food. So they don't want to have GM in their food. And another economic issue was if you look at the premium at this time. So you can see here a big peak. Traders who bought non-GM soybeans from Brazil, is mainly from Brazil, had suddenly to pay over 140 euro more to get this certified non-GM crop from Brazil than the GM crop from Brazil or United States. And there were already non-GM programs existing in Europe, so they had a sudden increase of premium. And this was around the time when we started, and the traders say to us, it's already economically worth to produce soybean in Europe and to use soybeans in Europe, because Europe is non-GM by itself in cultivation. So this, on an economic perspective, helped a lot, because the price is not so much different. And in this agriculture system, it's a lot of price, of course. It's very price-sensitive business. So why Donau soya now? Why we say we want to have Donau soya? Because we found some things out I just told you. And to summarize this is we are really dependent on soya imports, highly dependent. back to this time, it was, I think, 2.5% of self-production. This is worse than in oil and in energy. It's the worst ever. We have lack of soil in Europe's agriculture and hence no crop rotation with legumes anymore. So it's just what we have in Europe, like corn, rapeseed, sunflower, wheat, of course, a lot of wheat, and then a bit spices and so on, but these are the main crops. So no legumes in the agriculture system. Then the value added is actually lost. We don't process it here, we just import it and feed it, so we could create a lot of jobs in those countries. And if we want to have a GMO-free agriculture, we have to invest in local production and we have to support European agriculture. We cannot be dependent and ask Brazil to do non-GM. We have to do it by ourselves. And we found out that we have the resources and we have the know-how. We have the area for high-quality non-GM soybeans in crop rotation. We're not for monoculture and we're not lobbying soya. This is very important to say. If a cow farmer says he can feed his cow without soya, it's fine, it's good, it's perfect. So we don't force soya in all the feed ratios. We just want to switch from imported to regional soya. So our vision when we started was to have a press release saying that we made the impossible possible. We get 100%, nearly 100% local soya for our soya production in Europe. This was our goal. We wanted to change agriculture system in Europe. And then was a big question how we get there. And I'm focusing more on the standard, but before that I still want to give you a short introduction what we did then. Because we started in 2011, in summer 2011, to have all this information, all these ideas, and we were like collecting ourselves what to do, what we need to do. First, of course, we need to align all important stakeholders. We need to know who are the stakeholders, at this time in Austria, but of course we're internationally. We need to talk with, to introduce this idea. We have to define the core idea, so basically the concept of Donau soya, about this brand. It didn't exist at this time. It was just that we need to do something. We need a motivated team or a working group who actually helped us, because me and my colleague who started it, we were not super experienced in agriculture, and especially not in the feed sector. We are both from the food soybean sector. And then define the brand and the quality standard behind it, after defining the concept. And then create an organization and the go-to-market plan. So what can we do, how do we work, and in which framework do we work? So these were our stakeholders. This is basically Austria now, but we are now internationally, but at this time it was Austria. So it was the industry, the NGOs, of course, especially environmental NGOs, politics and chambers. I put the chambers to the politics because they sometimes more represent the interests of the politics than of the farmers. So agriculture chamber, for example. The consumers, of course. What do the consumer want? The farmers, and brackets the chamber. So chambers are representative of farmers. And research institutions. These were like the six stakeholder groups we thought we need to talk. And industry, of course, is big. Industry is the whole value chain. Industry starts from seed companies to agriculture traders to laboratories, inspection bodies. It's a big group. It's a very big group. So, and then we had the discussion in which way do we organize ourselves. So are we an association? Are we a working group? There are different ways, but we decided to be a democratically non-profit association. So we made an association in Austria. We set up, of course, the General Assembly, that's the members. And then we have a presidium with NGOs and institutions, researchers. We have a scientific advisory board. Actually, these are the real research people. And the technical advisory board. And then the LTD, I come back to that, was founded later, and our offices in the regions. So this is basically our organization, how it works. Yeah, these are our members. We started with 25 members in 2012. In April, we had a first General Assembly. Mostly Austrian companies joined back then. And today we have 260 all over Europe. Also in the US, one member. And it's divided in more or less 4 groups. It's agriculture, it's usage and trade. Usage is also like people who make soya milk or eggs or whatsoever. Marketers who bring it to the market, and NGOs and civil society. This is our history. I will not go into detail on that. As said, 2011 we started the discussion. 2012 we found our association. Below there you see the employers, so the people who worked for us. So we started with me and my colleague. He was voluntarily working in it. My colleague, it's my boss, it's the president, and he didn't get any money for that in the first 2 years, I think. So I was the only one employed, and then we got more and more people working for us. And yeah, this is how we developed. Today we are 22 people in 8 different countries. So budget, didn't put the number in, but this is how we developed. So we have a higher budget, and we have funds from the Austrian Development Agency, also from the German Development Agency, GSZ. And these are our offices at the moment. So we started with the Vienna headquarters, and then we opened an office in Bucharest in Romania. Then we opened an office in Novi Sad in Serbia. Then we had Ukraine in Kiev. Then in Chisinau, Moldavia. Then we have a representative in Poland. It's not an own office. We have a representative in Italy. And since last summer, we have an office in Munich in Germany. Office, and that means all one person, except Novi Sad is already 5-6 person, but all the others are one-person offices. But we start a project now with the Austrian Development Agency, so we can get more people in Ukraine and Chisinau and Serbia. So this is the organization structure. This was a really interesting process, because when you have a one-person startup, more or less, and then you get more people, actually everyone is doing everything. And in 2014, I think 2 years after, we had this big process internally, how we organize ourselves, because it was the division of departments, what we see in other organizations, is for everyone is so clear. But for us, it was not clear. We had to see what are the goals we have, what are the departments we want to have. And then we had this country, so we had to have a matrix organization. It was quite complex, also from a cultural perspective, to people to change their minds. They're not now in a department, and they have a person who is responsible for you, and so on. So this is the association, more or less. So we have the president, we have a financial chief officer, we have a woman who is responsible for the standard development. She's since the beginning with us. And then we have the Secretary General, which is me, which I am. And then we have the LTD, which is, so that the top level is more the strategic level. And then the operational one is the general management. And then you have the function leads. So this gets complicated. So it's the administration, the marketing communication, the quality management, research innovation, and value chain development. And then you have the countries. So Western offices and Eastern offices, led by those 2 general managers. And then we have our projects, which are also led by some third person. And you can see that sometimes there are 2 people. Means that we're not a big organization, so we don't have for every role a person. But yeah, for every role, yeah. So now I would ask you to go in groups, and we try this. Let's see. I would ask you now to develop our standard, so that we have this to remember these stakeholder groups. So if you could put yourself in one of those stakeholder groups, which this is very complex, the industry, but still we take it as one, and then discuss what are the points. So these are the questions. What is your interest as this stakeholder group? So for example, you're Greenpeace. So what do you want from Donau Soja? What is your interest, your input to our association? What do you want to see for sure in the Donau Soja standard, where is no compromise? And what could you accept as compromise? So have in mind, it's really, really difficult to control or inspect the whole value chain in agriculture. It's a very complex system. There are a lot of stakeholders involved in the industry and the value chain, so you have to make some compromises, but you can give time frames. You can say, okay, now we implement it, and then in 5 years or in 2 years or in 10 years we do something else. and what goal do we set for the association and their members. So, maybe we can divide leave it like that. So maybe I would count, and then you, yeah?
Yeah, before we go to the discussion, sorry if I miss it, can you explain again, like, what is like actually the main task of Donau Soja?
This is what comes after. This, this is actually, the info you have now is basically the info we had. So we were running around and talking with those NGOs and the politicians. We went to the chamber, we went to the minister, we went to the traders, the seed companies, and we all asked them, what do you want, and is this a good idea? Actually, that maybe the core idea, maybe I didn't explain it very good, is to have a brand, Donau Soja, which is a brand, and then we want to label the products. And at the end, I have it here, on this chicken here, on this egg or on that chicken, you have fed with, where is it? Fed with Donau Soja. Or here, fed with Donau Soja. So you have in the shelves, you have products, even Donau Soja when it's soya products, or fed with Donau Soja. And yeah.
How high in the mountains can soya be grown?
Not very high.
What does that mean, 400 meters or 1,000?
I don't know the number exactly, but for mountain farmers, Bergbauern, mountain farmers, it's not, you cannot really cultivate it. Yeah. But the Danube region itself is the best area for cultivation of soya. So Serbian farmers have sometimes more yields than Brazilian farmers. Yields, Erträge, tons per hectare. So, yeah.
There are a lot of studies who say that soya or soy milk, which is given to babies as milk, is not good or is dangerous or is, I don't know exactly, but do you also discuss or think about this?
Yeah, sure. There are lots of studies who say this is not true. The problem is that in soya beans there are isoflavones.
In soya beans?
Isoflavones. It's called isoflavones, and isoflavones are basically similar to estrogen, but not similar enough to kind of do something to you. So if you're a man and you drink soya milk, you don't get breasts or you don't get any female. Well, these are concerns, really concerns, that we got like questions on that. And when you see studies and you compare, for example, Asian cultures with European cultures, the positive effects of soybeans is recognized already a lot. So there are also rumors saying if you have breast cancer, for example, you should not drink any soya milk because of the isoflavones. But there are already scientific studies who are saying this is not true. You can drink soya milk because it's not a lot of content in it. It's not destroying anything. Yeah.
So how many groups?
Yeah, so we have 6 groups, and I would make 1, 2, 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No?
I'm a Brazilian, I'm gonna ruin a group.
Well, but it's a good import.
No, just a joke. I have to go to another presentation.
Okay. So then 6 here, 6, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's one group. But yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Then I guess.
yeah. So one.
So all the 6s maybe come over here.
So what group is the little one? Maybe we can the researcher could be
5, I think. Right?
5. So 6. Okay, then 6 is research and institutions. 5 are the farmers. Yeah. 6 is research.
Maybe we can just put the groups together and then say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then.
Okay, 6. Everybody who's 6. here. Who else is 6? I think this
It's 1, 6. Oh,
No, that's good. No, I think you were 6. Wait,
Yeah, he's 6.
you're 6.
I'm 6.
Yeah. So can you move over here?
Well, actually, I would prefer to do industry because I'm coming from industry
Oh.
for years. But anyway,
well then
All
maybe
right,
you
well
can
then-
change.
All right, then change.
Then change, yeah. Maybe someone can change with you. Someone from research who wants to go to group 6?
Google research? Forget. So now I'm
Wait, which